while someone else took the leadership lane. Yeah. Well, instead of saying, I'm happy to help, the invisible list that's running in your head. Remember I asked you to write down. You don't rescue the follow through. A burst of energy, a burst of relief, because it actually explains a lot more. What problem am I trying to solve? Excellent. Let's start with old rule number 1. Work harder, stay grateful, wait your turn. Now this rule is a sneaky one because it sounds mature. It sounds professional. It sounds like being a team player. And it shows up in various ways, right? But there are these automatic sentences. Have you ever heard yourself say, I'll just push a bit harder? I should be grateful. Other people have it worse. If I keep delivering, someone senior will notice me. And early in your career, the rule paid off. It paid off for all of us. Because early on in your career, output matters. Reliability matters. Low drama gets rewarded. So you didn't just get good at it, you got great at it. You catch the details others miss. You fix problems before they explode. You keep high standards. And you make it look easy. Here's where it turns. When you reach mid and senior level, results still matter, but the game changes. It starts to become less about how hard you work and more about how you shape, what you decide, what becomes clearer because you're there, what gets easier because you set the direction. Old rule number 1, it trains us to stay in an output mode. Head down, quiet competence, grateful, low maintenance. And the problem is simple. Teams will always take more output. Organizations and operations will always take more output. People will always take more output. And the room is going to remember that. They're going to say, she's solid, while giving bigger influence to someone else. I want you to write down this one sentence. Being dependable is not the same as being influential. I'll say it again. Being dependable is not the same as being influential. Hear me out. Dependable gets you trusted. Influential gets you listened to. Now, I've seen this personally play out in various leadership rooms over many years, where a woman, a colleague of mine, was running a key project, and she stepped in and she cleared blockers, she cleared hazards, she got things out of the way, and basically manipulated the timeline to make it better. She did all the hard working, did everything, and then when it came to that moment in the room, her manager stood up, they spoke first, they told the story, and in principle she got filed under the, she's useful, but maybe not a future leader. Now that's not because she was weak, but in the moment she stayed in output mode, while someone else took the leadership lane. And unfortunately, here's the brutal part about this. Because when you do this, when you stay in this output mode, the room learns a story about you. They learn phrases like, she'll handle it. She's always fine. She doesn't need much. She won't push back. And that story, those lines, become an invisible ceiling. And when they are your invisible ceiling, you do what we all do. Double down. More effort, more proof, more output. And the return gets worse. Because you get more tasks, not more say, more responsibility, not more support. More fatigue, not more freedom. Let's do a quick check-in. And by the way, as we go through this masterclass, I'm going to be doing a few quick check-ins. I want you to pause and I want you to write down 5 to 10 words. Where do you still wait to be noticed? Now let's get practical. We're here to break some old rules. You're here to break some old rules. So how do we break old rule number 1? Well, it breaks when you stop waiting to be noticed and you start speaking in leadership terms about the work that you're already doing. Let me be clear. It's not about being loud. It's certainly not about being, about bragging, because those two things very much stem from arrogance. This is about clarity and placement. You need to make your work easy to see as a leader so that you can be seen in that leadership role. I'm going to give you 3 tools now. Tool number 1, the leadership handover line. Love this. Caught yourself saying, I'm happy to help before? Yeah. Well, instead of saying, I'm happy to help, say, happy to lead this. Here's the outcome. Here's the decision I need. Here's the timeline. In that moment, you have moved from helper to owner. Tool number 2, the trade-off sentence. Now this one matters because it actually stops the quiet yes that we tend to say. So the trade-off looks like this. I can take that on if we drop X, or if Y owns the follow-through. What do you want? And you say it calmly, and then you stop talking. Appreciate that in this moment, you're not being difficult. You're making reality visible. Tool number 3, the promotion language shift. Okay? This is where most capable women will describe effort, where leaders describe impact, decisions, and scope. So I want you, next time you have one-to-one with anyone, I want you to use this. I want to be assessed on scope and impact, not volume. Here are the outcomes I drove this quarter. Here is the decision space I want next. I then want you to ask, what would you need to see from me to be confident giving me that scope? That question, that second part, changes the dynamic. It changes the conversation. It turns invisible work into visible leadership instantly. So let's do a little mini reset. And again, much like the quick recaps, I'm going to do mini resets as well through this masterclass. If you only take one thing from old rule number 1, take this. Stop proving you can carry more. We know you can. Start proving that you can set the direction. Now for the 7-day test on this rule, or at least on breaking this rule, of course. Pick one meeting this week, one project thread perhaps, and run the sequence once. And here's the sequence. Open with the outcome. By the end of this, we need X. Number 2, name the decision. We are deciding between A and B today. Number 3, ask for ownership in the room. Who owns what and by when? And number 4, use one trade-off sentence if the new work happens. I can do that if we drop X. What do you want? Do it once. Do it clean. And then watch what changes. Watch who steps up. Watch what stops sliding automatically to you. Watch how people will start to respond differently to you when you speak like the owner. So old rule number 1 makes you the safe pair of hands. Old rule number 2 is all about making you the default fixer. And once you become that person, it spreads from work to home. It's the same pattern, it's just a different setting. So on to old rule number 2. And it's this one. You carry it all, you fix it all, and you keep the peace. This is the rule that drains the life out of high performers. Because it doesn't look like a problem at first. It looks like competence. It looks like care. It looks like you're being the calm one. Ever caught yourself saying, it's quicker if I do it? I'll just handle it, it's fine. They're stressed, I won't add to it. I don't want conflict. At work, this is going to turn you into the person that everyone trusts to sort things out. At home, it turns you to the person who keeps everything stable. Well, that means you've become the glue. Let's see if any of this might feel familiar. Let's set a scene. You're in a meeting. It's running long because nobody pre-read any of the documents, the agenda or the documents. Someone comes in and asks for an update. That's already in the documents, already in the tracker. A decision that needs to be made is stalled because someone more senior is still thinking. What happens? The room drifts. And as it drifts, you step in. You begin summarizing things. You start pulling things back. You save it. And then everybody leaves the room and you do the follow-up. You're writing the emails. You're assigning the actions. You're chasing the loose ends. And then you go home and home isn't quiet. It's logistics, meals, school stuff, appointments, the emotional temperature of the house, the invisible list that's running in your head. So by the time the day ends, there's actually nothing left that feels like yours. Now let me be clear, that's not weakness. It's compounding mathematics. And here's what old rule number 2 creates. The more you fix, the more the system learns you will fix. The more you carry, the more the load slides towards you. The more you keep the peace, the less honest the room becomes around you. And then something personally really frustrating starts to happen. You start to feel resentment. Not because you're ungrateful, not even because you're a bad person, because you're doing too much for too long without enough truth in your system. And this is where a lot of women that I've worked with misread the problem. Because they start to think it's time management, or productivity, or motivation. You see, the real issue here is the shape of your role. You are doing roles that are not yours. You're carrying weight that needs to be shared and should be shared. I'll tell you, like, from personal experience, I've been the fixer. And in many ways, I wore that with a badge of honor. Because, you know, as a species, we like being needed. And so sometimes, for me, being needed felt like proof I mattered. And then I built this onto myself and I burnt out. And it taught me something I actually didn't want to learn in the moment, but retrospectively really powerful. Being needed is not the same thing as being respected. Needed feels great in the moment. Respected, though, is what creates a sustainable life. And here's the harder truth I learned. Fixing is a form of control. If I do it, I control the outcome. If I control the outcome, I feel safe. If I feel safe, I can keep going. You don't need to know anything about psychology to be able to recognize this pattern. Because what it shows up as is always scanning, always rushing, always trying to stay one step ahead, always bracing for what might drop. So let's put this in plain language. You're still functioning, still producing and still showing up. But it feels slow and it feels heavy. And sometimes even the small things feel like they take more out of you than they should. Now, if that resonates in any form, if that hits you in any way, I want you to take it seriously. Because trust me, the body is going to send the invoice. It might come as exhaustion. It might come as health-related things. It could be relationship cracking. And worse, it could just be numbness. Let's get a bit practical again on this. So how do we break old rule number 2? Because it's really important. Well, it breaks when you stop fixing in private and start leading in the open. That doesn't mean being harsh. It means being clear, bringing clarity. So you need to stop absorbing and start naming. I challenge you to do this. You're going to do 3 moves, test moves this week. Move number 1. Stop auto-rescuing in meetings. If a problem arrives, pause for 2 seconds, let the silence sit, and then ask, don't answer your own question, who owns this? What decision are we making? What happens next and by when? Make the room answer. Because if you answer, the room relaxes and you inherit the load again. Because, she stepped in. Move number 2. Replace I'll just do it with a trade. So you wrote this earlier, and I now want you to use it for real. Remember I asked you to write down, I can do that, what do you want me to drop? Right, it's time to start to use this properly. Because the sentence itself is powerful, because what it does is it forces reality into the room. I'm sure you'll agree with me that time is finite and capacity is finite. So therefore trade-offs exist whether anyone admits it or not. Here's a kicker for you. If they refuse to choose, you choose. Okay, then I'm dropping X so I can do this well. Calm, clear, done. You're measuring energy, remember that. Move number 3 is to stop being the emotional sponge. Now this is a biggie, particularly for women with high EQ. Most women have high EQ, but there are some that are on a very, very high level. And the point here is that caring doesn't require absorption. Support doesn't require you to carry their stress. So I want you to try this line. I hear this matters. I'm here. Let's slow it down and decide the next step. That demonstrates care without carrying. And that's leadership, not self-sacrifice. Time for another mini reset. So I want you to pause and again write down 5 to 10 words answering these questions. Where do you overcarry most? Work, home, or both? Now your 7-day test run for old rule number 2. Pick one meeting and one at-home moment this week. So for work, it might be that in a meeting, you don't rescue the follow-through. So before the meeting ends, you say, hey everyone, let's take a moment, let's capture the owners and the next steps whilst we're here, all together. And then name it out loud. Owner for X is Sarah. Owner for Y is James, and I'll own Z. The next check-in is on Thursday. You're not micromanaging, you're bringing reality. And then of course send the notes, but don't chase what you don't own. And then at home, let's pick one recurring thing that you just always handle. Could be meals, school admin, weekend planning, household logistics. Pick something that's yours, that you just go, I'm not even having a conversation about this, I'm just handling this. And sit with your partner and name it out loud. And say, okay, I've been carrying this by default. I need this to kind of stop this week, so let's decide on ownership. Don't ask for help. You're not asking for help. Decide on ownership of the task. So, quick recap. So you remember it. Old rule number 2 says, carry, fix, keep the peace. Your new behavior says, pause, name, assign, and trade. And when we stop carrying, when what we're carrying stops working, high performers often don't slow down. What happens is they start to reinvent, and this is what happens next. This goes into old rule number 3, because when they reinvent, they go to a new job, a new team, a new role, a new version of you. But let me tell you from experience that if the inner rules don't change, the pattern stays the same and rebuilds. So old rule number 3 says this: we reinvent yourself every time it breaks. Now this one is also extremely sneaky, because this one looks like growth. It looks like ambition. It looks like bravery. I wonder if you've ever said, maybe I just need a fresh start. Maybe this company is the problem. Maybe I just need a new role, a new industry, a new version of me. Now, sometimes, and hear me out, sometimes that is absolutely true. I'm the first purveyor to say that if the culture is toxic, if the environment is wrong, then leaving is the right move. And you should leave, if that's your reality. But where this rule becomes a trap is when it turns itself into a loop. Because the new job, the new team, the new title, what does it give us? It gives us a burst of energy, a burst of hope. And then, months later, same feeling. And it all starts to creep back. It's too much. It's too fast. Too responsible for everything. Quietly sitting alone with it all again. And here's why. Most people change their outside, they change the external, but they keep the same internal and inner rules. So the same pattern will rebuild itself in the new place because you've not changed your inner rules. So your longer hours will return, your overcarrying will return, the silence will return, and resentment will return. Now, I've seen women in different sexes move roles for the right reasons. For the right reasons. And then recreate the same load in the same situation in a new place. They walk into the new job and they think, I'm going to do it differently. And then the old rule kicks in. They say yes too quickly. They rescue too fast. They protect everyone else's discomfort. It's all well-intentioned, but 6 months later, they're back in the same place, just with a different email signature. And this is also where burnout gets dangerous. Because when you get back to that, your chance of burnout's much higher, and when you're exhausted, your brain starts looking for the exit. It wants to press the red button. So reinvention starts to feel like relief. Well, I'll just start again. I'll tear it up and rebuild. I'll change everything. But if the rules don't change, how can the rebuild be different? If the rules don't change, the rebuild becomes another version of the same cage. So here's a calmer truth. That messy middle is not proof that you're failing. It's often proof that you've just outgrown an old way of operating. So the better question is not, how do I start again? The better question is, what rule is breaking and what needs to replace it? Now this often feels and comes with relief and grief. Relief because it actually explains a lot. And grief because it means the answer is not another external change. It requires a deeper change on how decisions get made, how time gets used, how needs get spoken, how boundaries get held. Again, it's time to get a bit practical in this, to give you a feel for it. So here's a simple screen of questions, shall we say, to tell if the reinvention is growth, because it could be growth, or if it's escape. 3 questions. Question 1. What problem am I trying to solve? Name it. 1 sentence. Not a story or a paragraph, just 1 sentence. Question number 2. Have I tried solving this with a different conversation and a clean set of boundaries? If not, leaving might be the easier move, but not the right one. Question 3. If I was to take my current habits into the new place, am I going to get the same result? If the answer is yes, the move's not going to fix it. Now, on top of these questions, and when you're trying to understand if the reinvention is valid or not, I want you to add a rule that's going to help you with your decision hygiene. Right? If you are in a spiral, you do not get to make life-changing decisions today. If you are in a spiral, you do not get to make life-changing decisions today. Pause for 48 hours. Understand that's not procrastination, it's judgment protection. Sleep, eat properly, move your body, get out of the noise. Then go make the decision. Okay, another mini reset. If something that I've just said is bringing up some kind of tension, pause and write it down, right? And answer this question. Is your urge to change the outside or change the rule? Now, the 7-day test for you on this one. You're not allowed to start again this week, okay? Instead, run a small test. 1 small test. Pick 1. So test 1 would be a boundary test at work. So this is all about identifying something that you always absorb. Follow-ups, extra meetings, last-minute fixes, being the person that makes everything smooth. And then use this line. I'm not available to carry that by default. Let's name the owner. Now, obviously, that's the template. Work with it. Test number 2 would be capping your meetings. So for 1 week, cap your meetings in 1 day. So choose a day, any day, and pick a cutoff. And use this line. I'm protecting focus time today. Put it in writing, and I'll respond by tomorrow. And then test number 3 is, say, the home ownership test. Okay, so pick, again, this is about picking a repeating task that you're quietly holding, that you quietly do and get on with. And it's going back to saying, I've been carrying this by default. That needs to change. Let's decide ownership. What happens with these small tests? Because we're only doing little small tests. Small tests create data. Data creates confidence. Confidence reduces fear. Okay. Quick recap. Old rule number 3 says, reinvent when it breaks. Your new behavior says, pause, name the rule, run the small test, and decide from a steady place. That's the pivot. You don't need a new personality. You need a new set of rules of how to run your life at this level.